And here we are again.
Again, yes. Boy.
And there you are, watching us.
Yeah.
I hope you'll be entertained.
I'd like to welcome all of you across the country as well as here in Grafton. Today we're going to talk about romance.
A fine
sex,
romance.
And sex.
And sex. Well,
Yes.
yeah.
That's just like
Sex.
meat and potato.
Well, yes and no. You know, I think there you get a male and female view. I'm not so sure that for women, romance and sex are of necessity go together, but I think they do
They're
more
not
for men.
intertwined.
Not necessarily. I think you can have a lot of romance even without sex.
A lot of romance, even without sex.
Yes. But you may not agree.
I don't. That's fine.
That's all right.
It's okay. To me, the word romance was sort of a euphemism for sex.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, my.
Because one would never say, oh, look at those two, aren't they sexual? But one might say, look at those two, aren't they romantic?
But if they were just holding hands, for instance, or kissing or something, that might not be about sex. It might be about feeling in love.
Yes, well.
But love and sex don't necessarily always have to go together.
I held my mother's hand from time to time when she was older and crossing the street. I would, hold her.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have nothing against hand holding. I don't want you to think I'm opposed to it in any way. I think hand holding is the beginning of, this could be the start of something big, you know.
Well, hand-holding is good. Cuddling is good.
Cuddling has its place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't think as a country we're as romantic as we once were. And a lot of people will yell at me for that because they'll say we're just as romantic as we've ever been, but back in the day, I have to preface it with that. Remember, though, the Gene Nelson, Doris Day, Donald O'Connor, Gene Kelly.
Right. Those were
movies.
romantic comedies.
Yes. There was a sense of romance, a sense of yearning between people.
Well, a lot of that was pre-effective birth control.
Go on.
And there was a time when people, pre-pill, let's say. Pre-pill. Because the pill was the first absolutely assured way of birth control. Prior to that, you could get very romantic, and then you could get very sexual, and then you could get babies very quickly. Even if you used, traditional methods,
right.
They were not 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think people, when sex became an obvious option as opposed to a, well, do we dare option, things got different.
And progressively.
And sex became much more available to people, and romance kind of took a back seat because the urge to have sex, I think.
Well, would you say that as sexuality increased, intimacy declined?
Depends how you define intimacy, though.
Intimacy is like a byproduct of romance.
But what to you is romantic, We're getting very theoretical here.
Okay, what to me is romantic?
Yeah, what to you is romantic?
What to you is romantic?
I asked you first.
Oh, well, what to me is romantic? God, that's a hard question.
Oh, so now you want me to answer?
No.
To me, romantic
I'm fiddling
is
with it.
when you hold my hand when we're walking down the street. Now, I know sometimes you do it because you think I'll fall down if you don't. But it's still romantic because you're being protective and loving. And there's also just when I come back after a trip or even after going out for something and I see you and we kiss, that's romantic.
So there's an innocence to to romance?
For me, I
Right.
guess so.
I guess to me, romantic would be seeing you in a black cocktail dress that kind of plunges.
Really? That's romantic?
Well, yeah, that would really create inspiration.
Inspiration for what?
And intimacy. Yeah. Sex. Sex has become like so maligned, and it's so taken for granted
Yeah.
in movies, in literature.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it used to be that you would go out for a while before you would even think about having sex.
Well, to me, sex
And
was
now I
always,
think a lot of guys expect sex, maybe on the first date even.
to me, sex was a happy occasion
Yeah.
between two people.
Yeah. And
But I was very innocent about that. I didn't necessarily think of it as a prelude beyond the immediacy of the moment. And I think men perhaps are that way.
men have a tendency to think of sex almost in the same category as eating dinner.
Yes.
Something that's very good to have, something to do when you're hungry, and something to be appreciative and then move on from.
Well, I read an article in the New York Times, and then I saw it again elsewhere, that said that the average American couple married engage in sex about between 27 and 32 times a year.
That's less than once a week.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And that could be as a result of stress, working,
Yep.
raising children.
Right.
But it kind of moves things out a little bit.
Well, do you think it's because there's less romance? I mean, I know that women feel if all a guy wants is to jump into bed with him without anything, any other forms of affection. Now, to me, romance has affection with it. Sex doesn't always have affection. Sex is just sometimes about hunger and need. But romance has affection as part of it, I think. You feel fond of somebody, you feel romantic toward them, and you want to do nice things.
Okay.
Buy them presents. I mean, I always thought my father was kind of romantic. He used to love to buy flowers. That was for him a romantic gesture.
I think people get used to one another. Married people. Their kids are growing. They're exhausted. They're stressed out around money. How are we going to send these kids to college?
Right.
Working. Needing sleep. Gaining weight as a result of comfort food.
Right.
This is male and female. I'm
Right,
not
I agree with
attributing
you.
it to either gender.
Right, I agree
and then
with you.
all of a sudden, he or she doesn't look the way he or she used to look. Now, you still look great. I'm not insinuating anything.
I didn't think you were.
And I think I look reasonable compared to, you know, the swath I cut in my 20s, let's say. When I was a little thinner, my hair was a different color. It's basically the same me. I haven't changed much since my early 40s. I think the mind stops then, and what you see is what you get forever.
I disagree.
You do?
Yep.
Okay.
I think you've become a lot more conscious since you were in your 40s. I really do.
Well,
A lot more self-aware, a lot more knowledgeable in many ways.
But my thinking is pretty similar.
You mean your patterns of thinking?
Yeah, my patterns of thinking. So anyway, you have this couple who are overweight, stressed. Maybe they're on some kind of tranks. You know, I doubt they take homeopathic remedies, but maybe they do.
That would be good.
But they're on some chemical dependency kick, you know. And all of a sudden, the sex is totally diminished. And they have to remind each other when their birthdays are coming and when their anniversary is coming. And there just seems to be, you know, that song in My Fair Lady, I've grown accustomed to her face. And people become a habit for one another.
They can.
And I think that's very sad. And I think this culture today makes that more possible.
Well, you know, there's one thing, and that is when people are unhappy, they'll go out and spend more money.
Yes, that's true.
And that's a sad fact. And I suppose then that means that, except for happiness that comes about by virtue of spending money, it's not in the best interests of business to encourage happiness.
True. Very true.
Very sad.
And I think eating out is encouraged, and comfort food is encouraged.
And drinking is encouraged.
Drinking is encouraged, and other recreational forms are not encouraged, but they're more available.
Well, bicycling is encouraged if you go out and you buy all the stuff you have to wear in order to bicycle.
Well, that's
something interesting to me. Now, I know this is very off topic, but I always thought it was intriguing that once upon a time you hopped on your bike and you rode somewhere. Now you have a helmet, and you have special biking, tight clothes that will increase your speed, and you have to have a water bottle thing that you can sip as you ride.
You look Olympic.
And you have to have certain shoes that will stay in the pedals of your bicycle and things like that. And it used to be so different. And every sport is like that.
It used to be if one was going to meditate, one would sit down
in a chair or a rug.
Now you have to have a meditation outfit
and a cushion, a special cushion.
A special kind of meditation cushion that I always fall off whenever I try to sit on them. It's not comfortable at all, and you have to dress.
Well, you're not actually supposed to sit on them. They're supposed to be kind of under your tush so that you can sit up straighter and meditate with a straight spine, which is what you're supposed to do when you meditate. Straight spine, the energy goes up.
And it used to be you could go to the tennis court and you'd be wearing shorts and a T-shirt.
Yeah, right.
And you could play tennis. Now you have to have special tennis shoes.
Oh, definitely. They're not the same shoes you use for walking.
Oh, no, not in the least.
No. And if you go on a boat, you don't wear sneakers. You wear special boat shoes.
And this is all part of this consumerism.
Which in certain respects has really taken away from, I think, romance, not to mention sex.
And it drives the economy, because all of a sudden, if people didn't do it, what would happen?
Did I ever tell you about the wonderful science fiction story I read years ago? I mean, I'm talking the 50s now, where the lower on the rung you were of society, the more you had to consume. And you had to have so many pairs of shoes and tennis shoes and rackets and things like that. You had to have them. You had to, because the manufacturers kept turning them out and somebody had to keep using them.
And buying them.
And so this one guy figured out a way to get a robot to wear things out. So he didn't have to he didn't have to constantly be on the go trying to wear out stuff.
Right.
All right? So he did that, and he figured out this way of getting everything, the robot to wear out the clothes and wear out the shoes and so on and so on. And then he was finally, the powers that be, who were the people who could sit back because they were on the higher echelon, so they didn't have to use up all this stuff. They discovered him, and I think they did away with him in the he was a rebel.
Sounds like
he thought he was going to be rewarded, and that
like
was his reward.
Sturgeon,
I know it wasn't him. He was always about love. Somebody else wrote it, but I mean, the whole idea that we have to keep buying things in order for the economy to get wonderful is kind of ridiculous.
And in order to feel placated and satisfied.